Well, thanks so much for being here, Steve. I appreciate you coming out for this conversation. We've worked on a number of projects together, and I'm really glad to be able to give, our prospective clients some insight as to how we can work together as a cohesive team and how we both have our specific specialties that we integrate together in a cohesive building project.
I know one of our topics we want to talk about was custom home building versus like a full home remodel or full renovation. Obviously, there's difference between the two. On the designer side, on the architect side, on the builder side. So I'll focus a bit on the builder side because obviously, me being a builder. For us, full home remodel is sort of in everyone's eyes when it comes to they love the house, they want to renovate it, they don't want to move, and that's great, but you are limited, right? When you go new home, it's a clean slate. Much room for anything you want to put into it, from future-proofing of absolutely anything, new product, new windows, anything you can think of can go into it. So I just wanted to sort of hear your thoughts and if you had a different approach or different process from designing a new home versus a remodel or a reno.
Absolutely. A lot of the steps in the design process are going to be the same, but in a new build, there is so much more forethought as to how that home is situated on a site. When you're doing a full home remodel, you are already limited to the footprint of your house, where it is, and how it's oriented on the site. With a new build, there's going to be a lot more design and involvement with the architect, figuring out the orientation, which really gives you some advantages to being able to maximize daylighting and passive solar and some heating strategies and all of your views and to the site and to the surrounding areas. So there's going to be a little bit more forethought on that front. It's going to take a little bit more time on the design end, but opens up so much more advantages to being able to maximize all the benefits of your site.
So you think it takes more time for designing or like a slightly different process for a new home versus a remodel?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Starting from a completely blank slate, there's just a little bit more planning involved in, like I said, how that home is going to sit on site. With a remodel, obviously there's still a lot of the same scope there, but you are already in your footprint, in your spot. You have to work with that.
And there's some limitations, yeah.
There's some limitations on there. In either case, like a full home remodel or a brand new build, either allows you to start from scratch in terms of some of the design choices, in terms of materials. You're not trying to work with, an existing room and matching to it. You can have a lot of consistency with the type of flooring that you use throughout, trim styles that are continuous everywhere, colors that flow. It also allows you to consider things like air quality, water quality, energy efficiency, because you can be a little bit more cohesive in those systems to have like an airtight envelope to be much more energy efficient. So there are a lot of advantages to a brand new build or an extensive remodel from that point of view.
And even from a cost point, from being a builder, seeing the two, like if we were to do a full home remodel, just the demo cost alone for demoing the entire house on the exterior, the interior, that's quite the large amount of money versus just right up front. I know you're having your foundation, all those costs up front as well, but with a new build, it's sometimes they can be quite comparative within a couple $100,000 of the two. And we really have to put the expectations out there to the homeowners, to our clients, and say, like, this is what can be done with this option, this has been done with this option, what best fits your lifestyle, and what do you want to do here, right?
There's always a tipping point when that remodel becomes so extensive and you're trying to hit certain goals that it's like, is it better to make this work with this existing foundation or existing home, or do we need to start from scratch? I mean, clearly we value sustainability and being able to work with existing homes as much as we can. We do a lot of renovation work, but there are some situations where it just starts to not make sense anymore, that it ends up being the better solution to start from scratch.
If you had to change absolutely everything, like the roof comes off and new HVAC systems, new electrical already, and if you're adding on multiple different foundation types, and it's just to a point where, yeah, maybe we should have thought about, new builder, we just do it.
A new construction method that allows for a tighter envelope, that allows
That
for
too, yeah.
more energy efficiency or more sustainable building choices can have a better impact to start new. But yeah, there's always that tipping point. So you got to kind of weigh those pros and cons early on once you start to make that goal list and what you're trying to achieve on your property.
Yeah, that's great. When you're working with different builders for either a new home or a full remodel, do you have like a checklist, or do you have certain criteria that not only helps the builder in their communication style with you, but also in how it translates to the homeowner?
Absolutely. So, we've got a very clear 10-step process that we use in our design services. And within each one of those steps, there's checkpoints that we have to meet.
Nice.
And we're trying to, sign off one step before we move to the next. So we're always moving forward, and we're hopefully not wearing backwards. But you'll have to always start wide and narrow in your focus. So we'll start looking at, several options on the conceptual end, weigh the pros and cons of things, get some initial budgeting. And then, once you have that information, you can start narrowing in a little bit more. Then you develop that design a little bit more. Once you've picked materials and fixtures and finishes and selected all of that, then you narrow it right down into a really comprehensive drawing set. So it's important to, upfront collect all that information, look broad at that point at all of those goals, all of those pros and cons, those values, the budget, and then slowly narrow that down as you work through those steps.
Yeah, and even timelines as well, right? Like the difference if the full home remodel is going to take you 10 to 12 months and a new home is going to be, 16 months to 2 years. That's also very crucial too. And picking up off of that, our pre-construction is very similar. We have process like that as well, and we have checkpoints. Once we get to a certain point, it's okay. Now, not only are we retaining more funds from the client, but also the fact of, okay, now we've talked about this, now what the next thing is going to be X, Y, Z, right? So yeah, that's something that's really crucial in the expectations up front.
And really the most important thing is to have all those members of that team together at the beginning of everyone's process. Works so much better when, we're working together right from the beginning, and we can have those conversations about budget, timeline, materials, design goals together. All at the same table. And so I really think that's the biggest key and the biggest takeaway into making that smooth transition.
So yeah, that's great that you mentioned that about all of us being on the same page at the very onset, because that leads perfectly into this next segue here, where it's good to have obviously all stakeholders up front, sit in the same room, get on the same page, put the expectations right on the table. So, like one stakeholder obviously being the homeowner, next being, interior designer, architect firm, and then the builder. I think that is pretty much, for the most part, on most residential properties,
The core team.
the core four stakeholders that make decisions and successfully bring it to the conclusion, right? For us, the benefit of working with an interior designer, obviously, such as yourself, is I can't just put it in 1 minute, but the privilege of you just being like, Kate, Steve, here's all of our work. We've made it look pretty brilliant. Now I need you to price this out, and then I know we have the discussions about budgets and whatnot, but bring this to life. Versus if you weren't in the picture and we're just collaborating with the client, and the client doesn't necessarily know absolutely everything. Like, we're in the business, so this is you're a specialist. This is your profession, right? So trying to do that with the homeowner, I'm not saying it's bad or wrong. It just sometimes we can navigate a little bit, and the path is not straight because you have processes, right? So that I'm very thankful for.
Yeah, it's certainly possible for a client to navigate, a building project on their own using the expertise of all the individual suppliers, your kitchen designer, your flooring supplier.
It's a lot of work.
But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of legwork, and each one of those suppliers is really only looking at their little piece of the pie. And they're not really taking into consideration how that ties in with the whole picture. So you have to really have a strong vision in place to make sure all those pieces are fitting into the same puzzle. Otherwise it becomes a mess. So while it is certainly possible, and for a certain client who has, some industry know-how and time to do it, but it's a lot of work, a lot of time. And when you're not doing this day in and day out, you don't always know like just the different things that have come up in the industry, different products, innovations, how those things work together, or product failures, things that look like they're a fantastic idea design-wise, but then with the experience of a designer or builder who's done many projects has, realized that really at the end of the day, that system is very hard to maintain and it just doesn't do what it says it's going to do. That's why it's so important to have all those perspectives from the very beginning, the designer, the architect, the builder, as well as the client. And then, to pull in any other experts needed, depending on a client's goal. Like sometimes if it's, getting an HVAC designer in there early on to understand some of those goals, or, whether it's a specialist looking at things like air quality testing and water quality testing, always helpful to have all those inputs at the beginning so that you're all working towards the same goals.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. And I also think too, the difference between, a homeowner that's not the professional acting as designer, trying to go and figure it and gather all the information and do everything that you've already had so much experience with, but the relationships made throughout all those years, like where you can pull a favor, or you can, hey, like I need to get this sample board, as simple as that may sound, or, well, we've done this in the past and we know that this went wrong. So how can we, like, just from failures, right? Like you mentioned before, not just products, but like just times that you failed.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and what clients don't realize, like if they're shopping for flooring, they're going to a retailer that's, going to give them some information on flooring and steer them one way or another.
Because it's in their best interest.
Because it's in their best interest. When we're working on a design product, we're not limited to just one line or one supplier or one retailer. And we're working directly with manufacturers' reps, where we're getting like real data about the performance and the specifications of a product, not just because it looks pretty. Like we're, we're looking at that veneer thickness on the wood. Where is it manufactured? What is used to finish that product? Like what are the ingredients in it? And that's not always information that you can get from just a retail level source. So we're always working very closely with manufacturers' reps to really select the best product for the application.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not like you're just reading from a magazine and just looking off websites. These are relationships that's years and years established and well oiled, so that way you can get the best industry knowledge in order to produce exactly what your clients want. And it really just circles back to, you don't know what you don't know. The client doesn't know what they don't know, and they're just going to end up circling. And in the end, is that going to be more stressful and probably more costly for them? It's a full-time job.
Right?
Do they have to quit their work now to do this? And you know what I mean? And
you can get there both ways, but one way is much more stressful, and it can extend the timeline. And so, allowing that team to come together at the beginning, having the designer in place to guide that process just makes things go so much smoother. We also have systems in place in our process to make sure all of these details are covered. We have internal checklists where, from experience on past projects, we're always looking for certain scenarios or certain features to add into each space, what works and what doesn't work. And that's years of knowledge that we bring to the table.
So in your experience, do you have certain key takeaways where, not only from each individual project, but more or less like key takeaways where collaborating with, an architect, with a builder, that really resonates with you and that you can carry on to the next project and the next project? Or is it almost like each professional that you work with is completely different and you sort of have to coincide with how their processes are?
Certainly. I think every builder, every designer, every architect are going to have some differences in how they work. So there is a lot of value in using a team that has experience working with each other. And we have that experience working together, the two of us, along with Jordan Station Design Co. We've done a few projects with them, and we all understand how each other's process works and how they can integrate together to make it really cohesive. So there's a lot of value in that. And like a great example that we talked about before was our Risley project, where we did a major addition to an existing home. So we were were dealing with existing circumstances, existing finishes, trying to maintain a lot of that, but create an addition that was cohesive with it and making a lot of those details align. And part of that space was fully insulated interior space, and part of it was exterior space in like a sunroom. So it was a complicated addition,
It was
so important for the three of us to work together on that process to get all the details right.
There was a lot of details, from lining up the hardy on the inside of that patio space to the outside around the windows and how it translates to the dining room windows matching up with the patio windows. That was a fun one, and that was also challenging. And then even moving forward to this year, us working together on, I think, 3 different projects, we have some challenges, and we're going to have our work laid out for us too. So it's exciting.
Yes, but with all that experience working together, it helps us, problem solve through those challenges so much quicker and smoother. Yeah. And so we kind of like can finish each other's sentences because I know your process and you know mine. And so it just works so much better.
Yeah, we're going to nail it. Yeah. Okay, so the difference between custom home builders, I think sometimes people get the perception that a builder's a builder. To me, and maybe other people might agree or disagree, whatever, I feel that there's different avenues for different groups of builders. You have like a production builder that might be a developer, where they develop 300 houses in a lot, and it's production, right? It's okay, this one is this model, and you have like 7 different models, and they're just flipped around all over the place, right? And then you more or less have a custom home boutique builder, where it's more or less built on a slower scale, number one, but it's catered to the homeowner. It's from every aspect, where pre-construction is huge. Pre-construction on a custom home build is typically about 8 months or so to a year on pre-construction. And then the construction is more than that. Typically construction for a custom home, depending on size and lot and situations, you're like 12 months to 24 months, sometimes plus. So I just wanted to briefly touch upon that. There's different avenues that builders go down, and not every home builder is going to deliver on the same product.
Yeah, and typically we are designing with that level of boutique custom builder. That's the real advantage to working with a designer like us, because we can collaborate to create a space that's unique to the client. And not just unique in terms of like the aesthetic of the house. We're really looking at the functionality of it. We're looking at how that house is going to support your lifestyle goals, how it's going to grow with your stages of life. And I mean, the most sustainable home is the one that can grow with you, that doesn't need to be rebuilt or changed because something changed within your lifestyle. Really intelligent design allows for that future proofing, designs adaptability into it. We can customize to exactly what our clients' goals are going to be, to storage for the hobbies that they have, a kitchen that supports their lifestyle, whether they're like gourmet at home chefs or they're big entertainers, or maybe they're like a grab and go type of family and it needs to be really quick and convenient. But going through that custom design process with a custom builder like yourself allows to really tailor that design to the client.
So I would imagine you probably have a lot of questions trying to know the clients, like their lifestyle and how they entertain and what they do in the morning and how they eat and everything like that, to know how to design the spaces, right?
It really becomes a genuine relationship. We love the clients that we work with, and we get to learn so much about their life, past, their present, their future goals. And you walk with them during that portion of their life, which, like you said, can be, a couple of years sometimes. So yes, we do always start by getting to know our client really well. And we do have, an extensive series of questionnaires that hits on different functions of different rooms, but also hits on sustainability and wellness goals, design and aesthetic preferences. And those type of questions sometimes get you thinking about things that you didn't even really think to bring up. The functionality is something as, simple as what types of appliances you want to use are going to really impact the layout of your kitchen. But some of those deeper lifestyle goals in terms of, wanting to eat healthy or, having maybe certain health concerns, someone in the family who has asthma, those things impact your material choices. And so it's important to get that information early on, because that really starts to guide your design.
Yeah, and even lighting, lighting plays a huge role if the house is positioned, south versus north. and how many windows you're going to put on that north or south facing wall, east, west, like everything matters in where you're placing the house, where the sun is, obviously, but also material selection. That's just, it's a lot to think of, and it's a lot to get inside their heads and know exactly what they want. So we're asking a lot of questions, and we're just trying to get to know. It's like the first month. It's just, okay, we have to do a lot of meetings to even just put a sketch on paper to what your house is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And starting from scratch with a new build allows so much more flexibility to meet those goals well, particularly in sustainable or wellness-based design. It can play a big impact on the orientation of your house on site, or the types of materials you're using, or the wall system that you're going to use. When you have goals like having a low EMF environment, that can be addressed a lot easier from scratch than from adapting an existing home. You can wire a house in such a way that you're reducing the EMF exposure from your electrical lines, and you can make some changes into how your lifestyle works with technology in a way that can still reduce your exposure to wireless frequencies. That's a big one that can really be addressed well from the beginning with a new build, but it's important to know what those goals are from our clients from the beginning to do that.
Is that super common for you that you deal with right now with EMF?
It's becoming more and more of a topic that people are aware of.
Because we've had a few conversations about it. I haven't worked with you on limiting, EMF on any projects, but...
Yeah, so I'm currently in the process of training in building biology. That's the study of how your physical environment impacts human health. So that takes into consideration things like air quality and water quality. People usually have a pretty good understanding about that, but also things like EMF, electromagnetic frequencies within the home environment. And so sources of that can be from your actual wiring in the walls, as well as any type of wireless radiation. So those are just different levels of frequencies that can impact human health. And our technologies are still quite new. We don't fully understand all of the impacts that they have on our physical health, but there's been many, many studies showing that some of these lower level frequencies from your electrical wiring, they do play an impact on your health over time. So really the most important spaces are your healing spaces in the home.
Bedrooms.
So your bedroom. You spend 8 hours, hopefully, a day sleeping, and during that time, that is the time that your body is healing and recovering. And our bodies are brilliant things. They are made to heal and recover and filter out toxins, but they can't do that when they're in a toxic environment. So really focusing in on that sleeping area is a great strategy to create a healthy home. And so EMF, it's become a topic that more and more people are aware of. You can see people reverting back to wired headphones instead of these wireless earbuds. Distance makes a big difference with EMF. And so, when you have those wireless earbuds or your phone right up to your head, like that radiation is traveling right through your brain. So just the distance, sometimes it's lifestyle changes, but there's so many things that we can do within the design of the building that will reduce your exposure in your home, but also support those lifestyle changes to make it easier to reduce your exposure as well.
It's not easy for us to make changes like that, because we're so used to this convenient and very easy. Everything is at the touch of your phones or computer, basically. It's always in our pocket. It's
especially wireless technology.
Yeah.
It becomes more and more prevalent in all of our appliances, our systems, everything
Apps
you bring
for everything.
in.
Yep.
And, really at the end of the day, your best strategy is to hardwire your home and to not use the wireless radiation. That's going to be the biggest factor in reducing your exposure. That's something you can do in a new build to do that well from the beginning and make sure that it's wired in such a way that it still supports your lifestyle, that you still have your internet connections everywhere that you need it. And as a bonus, you get higher speeds with wired in connections anyway. So it is definitely the way to go.
even window coverings and blinds and everything. Versus having the battery operator or the rechargeables, right? Yes, technology's at our advantage where, you being the professional, you see this and the know-how with the design shows and we know what's available, but future-proofing the best that we can, obviously, it's a little bit easier to do on a new build point of view than it is when there's existing walls and stuff's closed up and without having huge scope creep and just you might as well build.
And designing for
right?
maintenance, right? Like that's really huge.
True,
Being
yep.
able to have access panels where all of your plumbing fixtures are in such a way that are integrated and seamless with like your ceiling or with your wall allows you to be able to access those plumbing areas and know if there's any failures or any leaks. Those kind of hidden leaks in the wall is everybody's nightmare because we all know what happens when those leaks go undetected and you end up with a huge mold problem. A lot of our modern building technologies and systems, they are just really susceptible to water damage and mold. And we're learning more and more, and the industry's gotten better and better. But like our building code standards, they're just your bare minimum, and they're not always accounting for these things. And so using a custom home builder allows you to really choose the construction method that's going to actually have longevity, and that can be designed for maintenance. That's huge. We live in a world where everybody doesn't like the word maintenance. We want zero maintenance on anything. But what maintenance really equates to is durability and longevity. Because if you can maintain something, whether that's like through repair or refreshing or regular checking in and maintaining things, it actually means your house is going to make it longer. It's going to last longer. So including those kind of details for maintenance is a huge asset to working with a custom builder.
Yeah, that's huge. Not only on the inside, maintenance-free product as much as we can. Obviously, a lot of wear and tear, but even on the outside, from more or less maintenance-free products such as like Hardy or PVC siding and steel roofs. I know that's not really so sustainable, but you have to sort of pick a path and what is important to you, and you have to just sort of navigate through it the best you can. And obviously, you're best to navigate it with people that you trust in your corner, right? So budgets. Let's talk about some budgets. That's obviously a big hitter on every project. Not everyone has money trees in their backyard. No one's printing money. So budgets is always going to be a thing. On your end, like all stakeholders, we're limited to the funds that we have at that given time for the project duration. And obviously, rolling back from that, we like to start all on the same page, have expectations, have processes and checkpoints to know where we're at all given times. And that just more or less goes with pre-construction. I know our processes are a little bit different, but more or less we're aligned in our approaches and what value we see in our process and also the clients should see as well. When we're walking them through every stage, we're also saying, hey, like, this is where we're at with this. This product can cost you a little bit more because of X, Y, Z, or it'll cost you more in maintenance upfront because it's inferior to this product or whatever. Bottom line, where I'm going with this is budgets is very important, and having processes in place is crucial for all stakeholders. And I just sort of wanted to hear your take and how you have some of those difficult conversations or how you navigate through that in your side.
Sometimes clients have this mindset that they don't want to give up what their budget number is. They don't want to, let it out because, everyone's going to want to spend it all and then some, and they want to get some competitive pricing without revealing their budget. And that really just works against everyone when that happens and we all have to guess what the budget is. It's really important to talk about that up front. And it's certainly something that's integrated well into our process is a budget check. The worst feeling is, going into a detailed, elaborate design only to have it priced out and be well beyond the client's budget. And it doesn't feel nice for anybody. It means more work on everybody's part. And at the end of the day, it just costs more money, which doesn't help the budget.
No.
So it's important
it's counterintuitive.
Yes, it's important to start with those conversations early on. We always try to gauge our clients' budget from the beginning. And sometimes that takes some education. If you haven't built before or built in a long time, if you haven't furnished a room in your home or bought furniture or appliances in a really long time, it can sometimes be shocking when you see the prices of things. And so sometimes it takes some education on the front, but we want to have those conversations early on to make sure that your goal expectations and your budget expectations are going to be aligned. And we will always start wide and narrow in. And so when we're starting with some initial concept ideas, we will get a well-developed concept put in place to the point that it can be priced like someone like you, using some allowances, but in a loose budget, what we would refer to as like a Class C budget. There's some wiggle room there, like 10 to 20% either way, but you get a good idea of where it's at. And we do that budget checkpoint at that time before developing all the details, before selecting every little bit and piece of that design, because it gives us a chance to shift gears. If we need to pull back a little bit on square footage, or if we need to change the direction on some of the finished materials, or if we need to phase the project. Sometimes that happens. In a large remodel, we might do a design for the entire house, but we phase it. One floor happens first, the next floor happens later. But we've done that conceptual design of the entire space up front, so you can plan for that next phase and know that it's all going to work together. Once we've fully detailed a design, that's when someone like you will put the real legwork into itemizing everything in there. And what I love about working with builders like yourself is that you do really understand everything that goes into a building project, and you price it that way. And it's not you're going to come in low and then nickel and dime for every little thing that comes up with construction that wasn't predicted. And of course, there's always going to be things that are unpredicted, but a well-experienced builder understands all of the hills and valleys in a build project and where things may come up, and they do account for that. And so your pricing is really comprehensive. You know that price is your full price for a finished product, not with things left undone.
Having all the stakeholders involved at the very upfront. I've been in experiences time and time again where homeowners think they're doing themselves a favor and they're going getting drawings done right away. They don't have a budget set in place. They don't really have an idea of what they want just yet. So they hire X architect firm, they design something, and then builders start pricing it, and it's 2-3 times what they thought it was, and it's back to the drawing board. Now you have time delays. Now you have more money that you have to fork out to get this redesigned, and people feel frustrated. They feel defeated before even getting into pre-construction because they just said we have to get started. We're in a rush. Let's get going. So haste makes waste, and just you don't know what you don't know. It's very important to have everyone on at the same time, and then just loosely talk about budgets right at the upfront. Budgets and timelines are huge because a lot of people don't know this, but budget is what's going to dictate the scope of work. The scope of work is what is going to dictate of how long it's going to take and all the paths that we need to do to get there. So they're all intertwined. I think in our questionnaires and our submissions and everything that in our questions that we're asking people, it's I think like the third question, like what is your overall budget for this particular project and what's your timeline? Because that'll dictate how we're going to do this, right? To me, it's not painful, but to some people, it's painful to talk about money. I think being the professional to talk about money and ask what's the max you want to spend on this. Sometimes people think as if we're asking what's in their bank account, or like if they say the wrong thing, we're gonna judge them, but it's not that. Like I want to deliver and make sure that my expectations meet yours. You know what I mean? And we're not going to be like budding getting out of the gate here and it's already bad, right?
We want to work to the same goal. And so we all need to know what that goal is if we're going to make our way to that goal. It can be a tricky thing though. Like I said, some people can be, if you don't have a lot of experience in the building world, it's sometimes hard to gauge what a proper budget should be.
For sure.
And so there is often some, education on that part and being able to have people understand where budgets are for the current industry circumstances and for quality materials. There's always going to be a question of cost up front versus cost down the road. And sometimes your cheaper option now actually leads to far more expense in the future with replacement or extra maintenance or failures or whatnot. And so there's a lot of value in choosing quality products and a good envelope system for your home. Like those hidden things, they're usually the hard part for people to part with their money on is, good mechanical equipment and a good building structure. Those things get hidden behind the walls, and it's hard to part with your budget on those items. But that's what's going to protect your investment, that longevity. That's going to save money down the road when you design a really tight envelope home that's energy efficient, good mechanical equipment. That's going to make your home run more cost effectively down the road, and it's going to save you cost.
You're going to save later. You're spending more now to save later to make sure that your investment's protected. And it's not necessarily maintenance free. You still have to maintain it. You have to do the checks. You have to bring the professionals in to upkeep the equipment and make sure that things are operating and functioning as they should. But if you do the cheaper now, it's going to cost you more later. So we hear it all the time where homeowners might go to X contractor because he was, the lowest price out of the 3 or 4, how many ever bids that they got. That's really not a good idea in so many different facets. But being the lowest bidder for, say, a custom home build or even a full home remodel, I would not do that because it's going to end up costing you more in the long run. Typically what happens with lowest bidders, if it's just a case of they do a simple estimate, they produce this quite quickly and they give this to you, and often free of charge. It's a case of me speaking now as that contractor. I hope I get the job. We'll see where this takes us, and then we can elaborate on this further, and we'll have more discussions. If that homeowner just simply takes that bid, there's going to be a lot of details that are most likely left out, and what usually ends up happening is there's going to be changes or extras, change orders that will just come down the pipeline because, well, A, they probably didn't have a good pre-construction process. There probably wasn't these elaborate expectation conversations that we just had prior about your budget, which will lead to scope of work and then timeline. And just so many other things where they might not have the professionals working for them. And that's probably why the price is the price. And what they said obviously attracted that client. But the value in the lowest is not ever going to be, in our eyes, a win. I'll let you take it from here on the design and why that'll also impact you.
There's definitely a big difference starting with the lowest bid, then going through the process of having an extra and an extra and extra and extra versus someone who quotes the design completely from the beginning with the knowledge of where to allow for certain things that they expect to happen during the course of the renovation or the build. And that's the final price. Like that low price always ends up being the same as the higher price, if not more. So you end up at the same place, but it was a far more stressful journey to get there. We always advise our clients, if they don't have a builder set in place yet, we're happy to give them referrals. Trusted builders like you are some that we work with all the time, and we'll have them do their homework and talk to builders about their project. But at the end of the day, it can't just be based on the price. It's got to be based on the fit, on the timeline, on the capability of that builder to hit specific goals that you're looking to do, their experience, past clients' experiences. You have to take that all into consideration as a whole. When you leave your whole decision-making process down to just that bottom line, and from 3 prices that you got from 3 different people, you're asking for trouble, certainly.
With us, honesty, transparency, communication is always on the forefront, and communication is just that. It's huge coming out of the gate. It's very important to make sure that we're being transparent and we know that this is like we're getting there. And we're not just going like this and then all of a sudden hitting you with like $100,000 change order. It's not right. I wouldn't want to do that to someone. I couldn't sleep with that. That's not how we operate. I've been told that we're not the cheapest. I've been told that we're 10, 20% more than others. I'm not trying to boast or whatever, but the takeaway is that your systems are great. You guys communicated. It's almost like we were your only client. And we know that you had 5 or 6 other jobs or 7 or 8 on the go, but we were treated as if we were your only clients. And if we had questions, you had no problem answering them. You were there for us every step of the way. Like you treated us like we're your family. And that's just
There's value in the experience,
Yep.
right? And just your own mental health during the whole process.
It's emotional, very emotional.
Renovations and new builds are not easy. They are hard and they're stressful. Even with the most organized process, they're still stressful. You're typically uprooted from your home, maybe living in a temporary space, or you're balancing 2 mortgages, or there is just automatic stress in the process. And so you definitely don't want to add to it with, a really disorganized builder that you're just adding extra after extra after extra because they never understood the design properly from the beginning. There's a lot of value in that. And a lot of our clients, they're working professionals. They don't have time to get the phone calls in the middle of the day like, oh, this happened and we need to figure this out and this isn't going to work now because because we didn't see this on the drawings. Like, nobody has time to deal with that. So having a good team, a good builder that's working cohesively with the designer from the beginning is going to take all of that stress away. And that's a big factor. It should definitely be weighed against the budget as well. So another big mistake I see people making all the time is not leaving enough time for the design process, or rushing right into construction before the design is finished, thinking that, those last decisions they can just make as they go. They'll figure it out as they go. Super stressful. Like, when you hear all these stories about people who have renovated or built, and they talk about, how challenging it was getting phone calls to like, oh, I need this tile and I need it tomorrow. Like, did you make a selection? Like, that is only a result of not doing the design work up front. Our process is to never leave anything for construction. We design the full package before anything starts. Of course, there's always going to be some modifications that may need to be made in a renovation situation. More often than not, you might find something that creates a bit of a hiccup, and that's to be expected. You can't leave a decision for later. It's never a good idea, especially because there's lots of planning that goes into things. Your lighting layout, to just leave that for the walkthrough and figure it out with the electrician. The amount of power that you're pulling on a run is dependent on the number of receptacles and the number of light fixtures, and, making sure you have enough light in the space, or that you've got a receptacle right where you need to plug in this appliance. Like, it can't always just be changed on the fly like that. And so designing everything up front as a complete package is the way to go. And at the end of the day, it saves you time and money. It's those decisions that are made along the way that add extra time. Now it's going to take longer to get that tile in. Now we've got to move this because we changed our minds here. And that is always what adds time and money to the budget.
Everyone knows this, but there's never, ever going to be a perfect scenario. Right? Like, stuff's going to happen. That's life. That's construction, especially like you mentioned in renovation world, where there's unknowns that you can't see beneath the floor or in the attic space, behind the wall, whatever you don't know, right? But it's also up to, the builder, the designer, all the stakeholders to make sure that there's contingencies in place just for that. So, like myself, I advise my clients, for renovations to have about a 10% contingency fund, just because you don't know what you're going to get into. And like you said, you might change something. Okay, you can change your faucet, and, so that's $600, $800, $1,000, whatever. But it's better to have it right at the upfront if you plan for it than it is to look for it during the stressful chaos time when decisions are happening on the fly and everything's happening.
Well,
it's
and
chaos.
having that plan in place allows that problem solving to go so much smoother.
Yeah.
Because you already know what the plan is, what the goals are, what the priorities are, and it directs that problem solving a lot quicker. You know right away, like when you've got a full electrical layout and this light's not going to be able to go here, well, you know where these other ones are and what you have to work with, and we can't move it this way because this is going to be here. And so it makes it way smoother to have that plan up front, so that even when the unexpected items do come up, the problem solving process is so much smoother.
Well, yeah, and knowing you probably already have a plan B and a plan C already,
Sure.
already in the background.
We are always working in 3D on our designs, and so it's like it makes it so much easier to pop back into that model and be like, okay, plan B, this isn't going to work. We found this pipe in the wall. We're going to have to move this. And it's very quick at that point to make a quick adaptation to our model, show the client, here's our solution. Look good? And you get a much quicker sign off on that change when that plan's there up front.
Let's just touch upon a full home remodel, because it's a little bit, obviously it's different from a custom home build where everything needs to be all designed up front. If a customer knows that, say they're doing, they want to do their main floor, their second floor, and their basement, we're going to steer them in the right direction and, probably have someone like yourself come in and say, let's design this whole home so we can know that each level is cohesive with each other, but we're future-proofing right now, and we're knowing what's going to happen in 3-5 years, whatever. If it's a 3-phase project, it could be 3 to 5 years you complete it. And it's good to know where we're sort of at with not just budgets, but design, to know how it's all going to flow, and then take advice that, if you're going to do your second floor, we're going to do that first and then the main floor and leave the basement for last.
Yes, that's another big mistake I see people making, is looking at their renovation really piecemeal. That it's a priority to get their basement finished so their kids have a space to be in. They know eventually one day they want to redo the main floor because it's dated and it's hitting the end of its life, but it's not now. So they'll focus in on the basement. And of course, it makes sense that in certain scenarios, you do need to phase projects. Like, not everybody wants to, fully move out of a house and tackle the whole thing top to bottom at once. Sometimes you need to phase it, but it's so important to understand the whole home holistically and do that design up front and then plan for those phases. In particular, that basement example, like you said, like if you've got a basement, a main floor, a second floor, you're going to suggest to do the second floor first. Always. All of your services come from the basement.
Exactly
all
it.
the runs that you've got to bring up for extra power, extra plumbing, they come from the basement. So when you finish that
Typically,
basement,
99% of the time.
yes,
Right?
in our homes, in our area, typically that's what you're seeing. But when you finish that basement and drywall the ceiling, and then the next year you want to do a kitchen reno and put the kitchen on the other side of the house, you've made it so much more
Working
complicated.
backwards, costing more money.
And so we're working on a project like that right now, where we've got a client that is slowly redoing their whole home. You've started with their basement, ironically, but even during that process, you told them about, certain things you should put in place for rough-ins for later. We've done a cohesive plan for all floors. They're now working on a second floor addition. They're planning to do the main floor eventually, but we've already put a plan in place. So we know exactly how those floors are going to tie together, because it's a bit of an open concept home, and that staircase joins the upper floor to the lower floor. They're even talking about purchasing enough flooring for the whole home so that it will all be the same.
Very
so
smart.
There's a lot of value in planning up front, even if you can't complete all of the construction in one go. Always keeping in mind, though, you're most cost effective if you do it in one shot.
Versus remobilizing numerous times.
Like you got to always weigh the pros and cons as to how you can balance your budget, because if you can
And sanity.
depending on the scenario, but like if you can swing it to do the whole thing at once, you're always going to get the most efficiencies that way. But with a proper plan in place, it is possible to phase things in such a way that it helps with the budget but helps with a long-term design goal. Well, Steve, what do you think all of our most successful projects have in common?
I would say clear, concise communication between us two, obviously, and our teams with the clients. Then I would probably say, secondly, is our processes. I feel that they're geared towards success, and we're steering the customers in the right direction, not only for our simplicity's sake and how we do our business, but also to save the clients money, to just be just happier in the end. What do you feel about those two things?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the importance of having a team from the beginning, and clear communication with that team is super important. And so having a method of communication, regular touch points, milestones, and making sure that everyone's involved and looped in on that communication has always been a clear way to a successful project. Even when there's bumps in the road that you can't predict, it's that communication that gets you through it. I think really setting the framework for expectations from the beginning. We've talked a lot about budgets being a big one, but also timelines. If there's not clear expectations on timelines, that leads to frustration when people think things are supposed to be done sooner. There's nothing worse than the Christmas deadline. We've got
don't even say that. It just
dinner
passed.
Party,
I can't do it.
Planned for this day for Christmas. We need to be in. And if that's something that is really important for a client, that needs to be on the table at the very beginning.
That's a huge priority.
And we have to make sure it's realistic. Because if it's not realistic and you're trying to meet these unrealistic deadlines, it just causes more stress. It causes mistakes. Mistakes cost money, and it snowballs from there. There's a reason why construction goes in a very specific order and you don't skip steps. And the same goes with the design process. We have a certain order that we do things in, always starting loosely and conceptually and gradually narrowing in with certain checkpoints and certain sign-offs so that we're never moving backwards in the process, we're always moving forward. Yep. And that goes with construction as well. Like, you guys are very organized in creating your schedule and having certain milestones that you hit. And it's just logical that you need to have certain things done and prepped before the next step. And anytime you try to rush those things in an unrealistic expectation, it just doesn't ever work. Another scenario I find a lot are clients who reach out who have just purchased a new home. They're planning to do a full remodel and they want to start it the minute that they get possession. Drives me crazy. They've left zero time for design and planning in this scenario. They want me to come in for a consultation during one of their, viewings with the real estate agent so that I'll have a full design done like a few weeks later, and so that the minute they walk in, they're going to start demoing. This never happens the way we want to. So, it's just something, it's an expectation we put up front that it's like that, it's just not going to work. I can't see everything on a consultation just for, a couple hours to see the house and be able to pull together a full design ready to go. Yeah. We have all these steps that happen beforehand. We need to get other people's eyes on the property. All the different trades need to take a look at what we're doing. And so it's just an unrealistic expectation.
And then we put the right people in place.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just that simple. Not everyone is a specialist in every certain category in building. Like, everybody has a certain area, and that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we're all in the collective together. And when you win, we're all winning. Many hands make light work. It's just a simple thing when we're all building each other up and we're all going to be successful at the end of this project. It's just, let's get there together. There's going to be highs, lows, there's going to be emotions, there's going to be a whole bunch of crap. But at the end, it's going to be good.
If we're clear with the goals up front and communication is great throughout the process, then you can deal with all of those hiccups.
It's easy.
Simply as a team.
So some advice I can freely give to homeowners, if they're willing to take it, would be not only what we touched upon before, getting the right team at the same table right up front, but needing to, in my opinion, value not just the process, but honesty, transparency, and sort of what you said before, just being a good fit. Why would you want to work with someone to do, let's say, a custom home build for 1+ years, 2 years, 3 years, and you're not really getting along with them? You don't share the same values. You're not, I don't want to say like-minded, because yes, it's business, but you don't have to be friends, best of friends, but you got to like each other to work together for that long.
It's a long time to be working together in very stressful circumstances.
Very stressful. You don't want to be fighting and getting, any tension makes things even more stressful, right? So the value for us is trusting, if I can give that to the clients, is just trust the process, our honesty, our communication, and let's just get to know each other first. And there's the reason why we ask our questions on our first 15-minute inquiry call. It's not just to screen, clients. It's more or less to make sure that we're not going to waste each other's time, to make sure that we're going to be the right fit for each other. Because maybe I won't be a good fit for such person, and vice versa. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no begrudging. That's just how it is, right? But to understand the value and to have that all up front, and to know what that GC specializes in, and to make sure that he has, his Tarion license or Tarion registered, I guess I should say, and HCRA license, to make sure that they can build you your custom home, or make sure that they have licensed carpenters to do your full home remodel, and licensed plumbers, tradesmen. All this stuff is very valuable. Or else you're going to be, as the homeowner, trying to piece it all together yourself, like we spoke about, and that's just chaos. I couldn't imagine. That's what you're paying professionals to do. So I wanted to touch upon that, and that's my advice, is just trust the process, trust who you're hiring, get to know them, ask lots of questions, and Just listen and trust. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, to add to that, we do often have clients who come to us as the first touch point, don't have a builder, they need to find a builder. So we're often in that position of giving advice as to, how do you make the decision on that builder? And we'll make some recommendations of people that we think will be a good fit for their project based on our past experience. And we'll always give them a document so that they're armed with some key questions to ask those builders to determine if it is a right fit.
That's good.
So some of the things that we'll tell our clients to talk to their builder about, number one would be what's your process? If that builder says, well, every project's different and we don't really have a process, that's going to be a red flag. Every builder should have a good process, an onboarding process, how they're launching construction, how they manage communication, how they manage pricing and purchasing. They should have clear processes for all of those things. Another thing that we'll get them to chat with them about are what are their certifications? Are they insured? And who are their trade partners? Who are their key trades that they use? If they're saying that we get all our tile from Joe out of the back of his pickup truck, that's usually a red flag. We want to know that your builder is using reputable trades and suppliers for their products, that they're going to warranty all of their work.
That's a big one, warranty,
So that's another big one. And then the next one would be, communication. What is your method of communication? And I know for yourself, you use a construction management software where you keep all of your project communication in there. You're taking regular photos on site, all your updates go in there, all of the building documents go in there. I've seen your site binders where you've got everything in there, copies of all the design drawings, the specifications for every product that's going into the space. So that's easily referenced by everyone on site. If your builder can't quickly identify all the ways that they keep clear lines of communication, that's a red flag. It's so important to not leave that decision just down to the price. You need to start asking some of these key questions to understand how your builder works, and that's going to help you determine if it's going to be a right fit for your project.
It's almost like an interview process, really. And I've actually done this before where it's more just a loose conversation of, okay, here's this project, we talk about it briefly, but more or less it's just, I talk about just our process, I listen to them and their project, and then loosely touch upon timelines, budgets, all of that sort of thing, and then I just go and meet them. If that all checks out and I agree that they're a great fit, and then verbally they agree that we're good, we're compatible, it's almost like dating here, but we're not dating, I'll meet you at your house or our office or whatever the case is. Let's have a conversation, let's meet, figure this out, and then we can go on to step 2. Which is, I'm going to give you some budgets. At that point, if you're really serious and you're cool with this and you want to work with Steve Bill, then it's a case of, okay, we'll retain you as a client, we'll pull a deposit, and we'll start talking the nitty gritty now and bring on people such as yourself and architect firms. And we're getting this now actually on paper. And everyone is now sitting down and getting all the common goals, right? So there's processes in place. Right? It's huge.
Yes. And vice versa, choosing the right designer for a project can be another big decision. Sometimes the touch point is with an architect or the builder first, and they're looking to bring a designer on board with the team, or sometimes they're looking for that designer as their initial touch point. There's so many designers around, it's hard to know what makes the right fit. And certainly it does definitely come down to it being the right fit and it feeling like the right fit, but there's more to it than just looking at a designer's aesthetic or their projects or their style. Design isn't just an art. It's a very balanced art and science. And so our approach is always an evidence-based approach where we're using fact to determine the right solutions for certain situations. I went to school for design. I am a fully certified Aredo designer, which means I have then done a number of years of supervised experience under an architect and interior designer, and I wrote a 3-part exam in order to get that qualification. So I'm registered with the Ontario Ontario Association of Interior Designers. And I also have additional certifications in building biology. So I bring a lot of that extra specialized knowledge to the table. It's important to really understand what you're looking for in your project, what your goals are, and determining the best fit in a designer and based on their knowledge, experience, certification, and their specialties.
Yeah, and how their business is just driven and how it's fitted, right? Like it's not just like you just said, the aesthetic and the design and how it looks. There's a lot of different factors.
Well, we've gone over lots of points and talked about all of the challenges of full home remodels or new builds, but we don't want to discourage people on this. A new home is an exciting venture, and it should be one. You want to make sure you're working with the right team that keeps this an exciting and an enjoyable process. And that really all comes down to the experience of your team and the process that they use to get you there. And that's something that we both value is enjoying our day-to-day work and making sure that that process is enjoyable for everyone. We love working with our teams, with our trades, with other professionals, and really like to make that process as smooth and stress-free and enjoyable for our clients as possible.
All right, so basically, if clients want to be learning more about your process, our process, and how we handle new homes and full home remodels, just reach out to us, right? Like they can reach out to you individually, reach out to me individually, our teams, contact us through our website, give us a call on our business line. Maybe you're similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone interested in learning more about our services or seeing some of our portfolio work, you can head over to our website at envisiondesign.ca. And then we also have client contact forms there for both residential and commercial design projects. And that's the easiest way to get in touch with us, to give us a little bit more information about your project, and then we will reach out with a call to learn some more.
Well, Jen, thanks. That's been awesome. I really appreciate this conversation. It was a lot of insight, not only for me to know a little bit more about your process. I'm pretty familiar, but more or less for our listeners. I think this was an awesome conversation that will have a lot of value to our prospects.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's always great hearing a little bit more about your process, and I hope clients can, prospective clients, take a lot away from how to get started with a process and how to make the right choice in the professionals on their team.
Yeah, honestly, it's a lot to take in, but just reach out to us, right? And we'll go from there. We'll follow the process and have fun doing it.